What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going through Ragni's history. We're going to be finding out everything that there is about the city, going through the wiki, going through quests, the in-game lore, the NPCs that don't even matter much to the story, and we're going to get a whole story all together using the wiki, using every resource we have at our disposal. We're going to learn the whole history of this world through whatever means possible. So join me as we hop into the game, we hop in through the wiki, and we find out everything. In order to learn about the city that we know about first what we need to know is where did we come from? And that is from here. This is the start of the game. This is the entrance to Ragni as well. So it is the first place that we need to begin with. If we look at the map here, here it is. If we enter to Ragni from here, from a city that we came from, that will become in a later update, called Fruma. Now, this will be expanded on later in the story. We don't know much about that city, but we enter Ragni, and we enter Ragni through this gate, and this is the first thing we see. We're in a castle, and we go and we talk to a king. We have to go talk to the king, and what does he tell us about the world that we have? Well, he tells us enough that we need to ask questions. He tells us that Ragni is a noble fort, and it's one of the most influential cities in the province, and that it's our job to stop the growth of the monsters that are raging the province. You might want to train a little more every day, but he doesn't tell us all the problems within his own city. He doesn't tell us everything that we see around. Like, why is there so much destruction within the city itself? There are houses that are torn down. There are secret labyrinths within the city itself. What is going on? My first place to look was obviously the wiki, where everything's compiled, and it does give us the majority of the story. It's all mostly there for us. Ragni is an old city, one of the oldest in the province, more than 1,000 years old. It is connected to the other biggest city called Troms with a passage. This is the passage right here, and it is guarded by Troms in the ravine connected to the city. The Nether portal was uncovered during the Corruption War about 1,000 years ago from where the player begins, and as story would have it, about 800 years after the portal was shown, about 200 years ago, there was a person named Bob who was born in the city, and he was able to defeat all the evil, and he was able to finally go away. And then all that it says is that 16 years ago, Bob mysteriously disappeared. It doesn't really tell us too much information, so I had to dig deeper. As I was searching to try to find more information about this guy named Bob, I came upon this at the entrance of the Ragni Castle. It's this item frame with something with a little teardrop looking thing inside of it that said "In memory of Bob." Now, after looking around some more, I found in one of my previous episodes that if you kill this zombie named Bob the Zombie, he drops a tear that looks identical to it. And once we have this tear, we can come back over here to the fireplace, and if we throw it into the middle section of the fire, it doesn't burn, the fireplace just disappears. And behind us, particles start showing us the directions to go here, to the castle painting in the wall. And once we enter, well, I'll just let my past self read it out to you. Here, the legend of Bob. 854 years after the portal was first opened, Ragni suffered one of the most largest raids ever recorded on Western soil. Although the famous forts of Ragni and Troms were deemed impenetrable, this was unfortunately not the case when the seas of monsters brought by the curse came knocking at the front gate. Despite having fought for centuries in the Cursed War, Ragni's army's numbers were high, and many men laid down their lives to protect the families within the walls. However, the sheer numbers pressed against the door broke the hinges, and the large gate fell into the bridge, and the largest horde recorded ever entered the city. Many of the residents were slaughtered, maimed, or infected by the onslaught of creatures. Those able to run hid in the sewers of vast series of tunnels that run out of the city and into the foulest place that humans could create. their prison in the sewers. The idea was to combine two of the most horrible things, the untreated sewage and the dark cells containing Wynn's worst criminals, to add to their suffering. It really was a horrid place, but in a time like this, it was the safest place to be, and the women and children sought refuge in its stench. During the fight, a woman who never said her name, nor where she had come from, and she certainly wasn't one of Ragni's own, gave birth to a baby boy on the cold floors of the sewer. Though the woman accompanying her did all they could, the unknown woman did not survive the childbirth. The horde lasted 6 days, and the sewer folk did not know if the baby would make it. The conditions were so rotten. Against all the odds, the child made it, suffering no more but a smudge of dirt across his cheek. To everyone's amazement, he was adopted by Ragni's poorest resident, a single mother named Momo. He worked in a local bakery, carrying bread and cake into the palace, taking whatever he could get away with. Despite his mother being poor, she was nonetheless intelligent and taught the child, who she named Robert, everything she knew, taught him how to read, write, and to a degree, fight. Robert was never a popular lad, always treated differently. His skin was a shade of gray, unnatural to those of Ragni, who had always been fair-skinned. As such, he didn't have many friends, and wasn't held particularly well among older citizens either. When he was 12 years old, a horde found its way into the city once more, like it just did over a decade before. Although far smaller than its predecessor, the horde was nonetheless a threat, as Ragni's army was so wounded from the last encounter. The beacons were not lit from the scouts and caught the entire city by surprise. Not Robert, though. He always kept a knife he stole from the butchers in his belt to protect the ones he loves. Being so poor, Momo's shack was on the outskirts of Ragni, and was one of the first to get hit. Robert ran far from the house, finding it empty, but hearing a gasping from below. Entering the cellar, he found his mother lying bleeding beside a recently stabbed creature. He went to her aid, knowing it would be in vain. She simply nodded at him. They had made an agreement when Robert was 8 years old that if she ever became infected, she wanted him to end her life, rather than endure the gruesome, prolonged infection that had no cure. Momo placed in Robert's hands a piece of parchment with a crude blood-stained drawing of 4 areas, each with a strange name hidden under it he hadn't heard of. In the fires of the fight, Robert fled from the city, wielding not his butcher's knife, but a pair of pitch-black knives, encrusted with symbols that glowed a purple color, a cloak and a pouch holding what little food was left in the house. But the story didn't end there. In fact, the story of Bob is one that permeates the whole world of Wynncraft and all the cities within it. And I truly hope we get to fully realize that and explore it on this channel. But for Ragni, the story ends for today. This is a starting city for each player. A city that has stood for thousands of years through the chaos of the mobs that lurk around, to great warriors and heroes like Bob, and to great warriors and heroes like us, like the player. This is where we begin, and we will come to find that this is where it will end as well. But for today, we will end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.